This week, NQAPIA, or the National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Alliance, has been hosting a week of action, of events all around the country focusing on LGBT and immigrant rights specific to the Asian American Pacific Islander community. So we're going to hear from speakers whose experiences are relevant to what we're up to and what NQAPIA does. Our first speaker is Noel Bordador, who's a Christian minister who was undocumented but legalized in 1986 and has gone on since to serve people with HIV and AIDS.
Good afternoon. My name is Noel Bordador, and I am an Episcopal priest in the Diocese of New York. I am originally from the Philippines. I'm also a gay man. In 1980, at the age of 15, I became an undocumented immigrant after my tourist visa expired. And my application to have it converted into a student visa was denied by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. And I was an undocumented immigrant until 1987, when I applied and was granted amnesty under the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, which, by the way, was signed into law by President Reagan. 10 years later, I became a U.S. citizen, and I was grateful to be a recipient of amnesty and made a promise at that time that as a citizen of this United States, I will spend my life helping the people of this country. So I have been a social worker for the last 25 years and a priest for the last 14 years. And in these years, I have served the LGBT community and other marginalized people of the city, the homeless, the mentally ill, those living with disabilities, including HIV and AIDS. So it is my hope that the people of this country will see that immigrants do serve this country and make positive contributions to its life. Thank you.
And next we'll hear from Tony Choi, a young person who received DACA and is now an LGBT activist.
Thank you, NQAPIA, and especially to Executive Director Glenn McPantai for organizing this press conference. My name is Tony Choi, and I am an undocumented 26-year-old LGBT youth from Bergen County, New Jersey. My family and I moved here when I was 9 years old, after the fallout of the Asian financial crisis in the late 90s. And the financial crisis had wiped away our dreams, so we wanted to start a new chapter in our lives. And things always haven't been that easy. We were exploited, cheated, and silenced. At one point in time, all of our clothes were used clothes that we bought from Salvation Army. And even though we tried our best, we lived without electricity for a while. Yet, we made it through. And I've gotten a full tuition scholarship to go to college. But in 2010, after the failure of the DREAM Act in the Democratic-controlled Senate, and my mother's cancer diagnosis, I was faced with two options. My options were to either continue to live here, closeted, taking care of my mother, or to go back to Korea, where I would be hazed in the military, because I would have to serve a mandatory military sentence. Instead, I chose the third option, to speak out and advocate for my community instead. And as a result, in 2012, President Barack Obama announced Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, which I am a beneficiary of. And since then, I have worked to halt deportations and work so that other undocumented youth like me can get their DACA as well. And as a result from an increased pressure from the immigrant community, President Obama recently announced that more undocumented folks like me were eligible for reprieve from deportation. Yet, a Texas judge has filed for an injunction continuing the waves of deportations. If we are a true advocate for LGBT rights, as Mrs. Clinton has stated in her tenure as Secretary of State, our communities need administrative relief. If we are a country built on the belief of freedoms and pursuit of happiness, as Senators Paul and Cruz have declared, our communities deserve an equal shot at these freedoms too. Thank you very much.
And next we'll hear from Aya Tasaki, who is an LGBT activist currently in the U.S. under a student visa.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aya Tasaki, and I'm a queer Japanese native, and I have spent over half of my life in this country on a variety of visas. I am currently on an F1 student visa studying law. Throughout my years here, I have strived to create and strengthen spaces for our LGBTQ people of color communities. I'm really fortunate to have found a home in places like the Audre Lorde Project, where I spearheaded the organization of the first LGBTQ contingent in the annual New York City May Day March for Worker and Immigrant Rights. I'm currently on the NQAPIA Board of Directors, and I continue to be dedicated to lifting up voices of the LGBTQ API community. As a visa holder, I have a privilege of having legal status, but that status is limited in time as well as in my possibilities for a future in this country that I have come to call home. What's more, the current visa scheme places extreme limitations on who may access this privilege and benefits by narrowly focusing on traditional family ties and on certain professional fields. We need a visa scheme that expands opportunities to low-wage workers, to students and professionals who contribute to our communities in various ways beyond the STEM fields, and to those whose familial ties do not fall within the narrow definitions that are currently set forth. We need a visa scheme that does not racially profile our Muslim, South Asian, and Southeast Asian communities in ways that often subject them to extensive wait times and backlogs. There are countless LGBTQ API folks like me who have found a home here. Those who have built up our community that we are able to be a part of today, and those who carry on the work in the future. Our ticket to continuing to serve and to be part of our community should not be temporary and should not rest on a highly exclusionary and discriminatory scheme. Thank you.
And next we'll hear from Glenn Magpantai, the Executive Director of NQAPIA.
The reason why we are here before the federal court is that in November, President Obama issued executive action on immigration reform, on immigrants' rights. This was done after years of organizing by the community to get the rights that our community so desperately deserves. It expanded DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. It expanded and it created a new program called DAPA, the Deferred Action Parental Arrivals, Parental Accountability Program, which will benefit over 5 million undocumented immigrants across the United States. But a judge in Texas said that those programs have to be suspended and that they may not be legal. A court is now overhearing at the Court of Appeals. This court behind us, sister circuit in the Fifth Circuit, is having a hearing this Friday to determine the legality of executive action, to determine the legality of whether undocumented immigrants can stay in this country and gain work authorization. We are here to protest that lawsuit, and we are here to demand implementation so that undocumented immigrants, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender immigrants can gain all the rights and privileges that they deserve in this country. We filed as NQAPIA an amicus brief before the Fifth Circuit. We will take this case all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. In New York City alone, 250,000 undocumented immigrants are in this state alone. If undocumented immigrants get work authorization, it will bring in $184 million in the tax base to the United States, as produced by a study by the Center for American Progress. For lesbian, gay, bisexual communities, and for Asian American, South Asian, and Southeast Asian and Pacific Islander communities, immigration reform has an incredible impact in our communities. So many of us are undocumented. So many of us are activists. So many of us, as you have just heard, are the ones who are building the LGBT community, who are fighting for the rights, and they are immigrants. They are the ones who are fighting to keep this country safe, to benefit our community as a gay community, and that is why we are here today. 29% of LGBT immigrants are also Asian American, South Asian, Southeast Asian, Pacific Islander. 263,000 LGBT API immigrants exist, and 15% of them are undocumented. Lastly, the DAPA program, which will allow citizens and legal permanent residents to legalize their parents who are undocumented. So many times it is our mothers and fathers who love us, who care for us, and they're the ones who should be allowed to remain in the United States. As young people, as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, we cannot come out, well, we will come out, but we can't always come out without the support of our parents. And they love us, they nurture us, they should also have the opportunity and the right to legalize. So because of this, Because of where we are as immigrants and undocumented immigrants, we stand now in solidarity and in protest of this lawsuit and demand an end to racial profiling, demand the legalization of undocumented immigrants, demand the rights that all of our communities fully deserve and all the dignities that they are afforded, which we believe is afforded to them under the Constitution of the United States.
My name is Tony Choi. GAPIMNI, Gay Asian Pacific Islander Men of New York.
In the course of your comments, you mentioned that you were concerned about having to go back and face military conscription in South Korea if you are deported from the United States. Can you talk about why you face that, how you know that it'll be difficult?
So in my course of activism, I've gotten to engage with Korean activists, Korean LGBT activists, who say that the conditions in the military are not ideal for gay, bi, and trans men, because there's lots of hazing, and the culture of masculinity fosters a lot of violence and hazing. And recently, there's been reports of suicide, not necessarily from the LGBT, the queer identifying men, but men who've been hazed and have had enough. And yet, there's no way of me avoiding it without having to serve a prison sentence.
And what is, and do you speak Korean? And have you ever been back since you came?
No, ever since I left Korea, I haven't been able to go back, which is 17 years. For the reason that if I were to go back without something called advanced parole, I would face a 10-year ban on re-entry, and even after those 10 years, it would be really difficult for me to get a visa approved to come to the United States. And I don't think I would be able to acclimate very well to the life back in Korea, because while I do speak Korean, it's at a third grader's level. My Korean has frozen in time, and yet I'm 26 years old. So imagine a 26-year-old speaking like an 11-year-old.
Glenn Magpantay from Executive Director, National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Alliance.
The Republicans at every stage have been attempting to block any kind of immigration reform for very long time, like decade or more. And I'm just wondering, how do you respond to that? What's the future of the Republican Party if it fails to do immigration reform?
We're disappointed in any efforts to limit the rights of Americans who are in this country, who are working hard and building this country. The Republican Party says that they stand for the proposition for freedom. We believe that immigrants should also be free in this country, to contribute to this country that they have built. We find it very frustrating that Republicans and certain conservatives have opposed any efforts to legalize undocumented immigrants. This should not be a partisan issue. There are undocumented Republicans from Cuba, from other countries, from Vietnam. There are undocumented Democrats. There are undocumented, independents. We are all part of this American society. It is not a politically partisan issue, and we are very disappointed that any party would take any position in opposition of the rights of Americans.
Right now, Marco Rubio announced his candidacy for presidency, but his attitude towards immigration reform is very limited. Can you talk about that?
Marco Rubio was one of the architects of the Senate bill that had a program in it to legalize certain segments of the community in the United States. And while that Senate bill had a number of positive elements, it also had a number of drawbacks. Nevertheless, we did see that the United States Senate acted. We were hoping that the Republican-controlled House of Representatives would have also done the right thing and give relief to so many Americans who are already here. They did not do that. And so we are disappointed in those efforts. Marco Rubio and all the presidential nominees, whether it is on the Democratic or the Republican side, will need to speak about immigration reform. Our communities, citizens and voters of the United States, were also once immigrants. Citizens and voters of the United States have immigrant family members, relatives, children, parents, grandparents. We are all part of the American dream. We all want freedom. We all want the choice to be able to naturalize in this country and build this country that we love so much.
When President Obama came to office, he had essentially a filibuster-proof majority. It took a few months before that actually happened, but he didn't put immigration reform on the agenda. Can you talk about that in relationship to what he's doing now?
Yeah, we're delighted. I mean, we're very happy that the president has taken bold action on immigration reform. We know that we had to push Obama. We had to push the Democrats and Republicans. We take nothing for granted. We must always push our elected officials to do what we think is in the best interest of this country, whether it is the Democrat or Republican. We also pushed Bush on these issues, Bush 1 and Bush 2, and Mr. Clinton. So these are issues that we want to make sure that are addressed by our national leaders. We are very happy that the president took bold action on immigration reform. Now, it's not for everyone. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. Only 5 million of them will get relief. There are so many more who are working hard to build this country, who want to contribute to the tax base, but are unable to do that. Our frustration now is that those actions that the president has taken are being blocked by an unelected judge who's putting his own political desires ahead of the legal arguments and the legality on these issues, and saying he doesn't want to have undocumented immigrants legalized in Texas, so he has struck down and suspended the executive actions that President Obama took. That case is now going up to the Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. We filed a brief counsel on that matter, and we will take it to the Supreme Court to fight for the rights of immigrants here in the United States.
I bring it in the morning. If I rebel,